The training arena smelled like burnt ozone and disappointment. I stood at the observation deck with my mandibles clicking nervously, watching the new batch of recruits stumble through what should have been a basic combat simulation. 3 cycles into the Galactic Defense Academy's spring intake, and already half the class looked ready to quit. "Pathetic," muttered Commander Vrel beside me, his 6 eyes narrowing in disgust. "Look at them. The Corthian can't hold formation for 30 seconds. That Yeltran keeps firing at shadows. And the human—" He paused, pointing one of his 4 arms toward the smallest figure in the arena. "The human is going to get someone killed." I followed his gesture to spot her. Cadet Emma Reeves, 5'0" of what the humans call stubborn determination, currently pressed flat against a barrier wall while plasma rounds scorched the air above her head. Her breathing came in ragged gasps that the arena microphones picked up clearly, too clearly. "She shouldn't be here," Vrel continued, his voice dropping to that particular tone of certainty that military commanders use when they've already made up their minds. "Humans are Category 4 species, fragile, slow, no natural weapons, no enhanced senses, no adaptive biology. They're support staff at best. Logistics, medical, maybe engineering if they're particularly bright." I didn't respond immediately. Couldn't, really. Because technically, Vrel was right. When humanity had stumbled into the galactic community 15 standard years ago, they'd been classified and catalogued like every other species. Category 4 meant they were intelligent enough for citizenship but physically unsuited for frontline military service. The assessment had been thorough. Humans broke easily, their bones fractured under impacts that wouldn't bruise a Corthian, their skin tore. They couldn't breathe half the atmospheres in the galaxy. They needed constant hydration, regular sleep, and perished if their core temperature varied by more than a few degrees. They were, by every measurable standard, weak. "She's been accepted into the program," I said finally, keeping my voice neutral. "She passed the entrance exams." "Barely," Vrel snorted. "And look at her now, 3 minutes into a level 2 simulation, and she's pinned down. The scenario hasn't even introduced the primary threat yet." As if summoned by his words, the arena's holograms shimmered. The practice enemies, simple target drones, dissolved. The lighting shifted to a sickly green, and from the far end of the massive chamber, something new materialized. I felt my blood chill. "Is that—" I started. "A Krexith hunter simulation," Vrel confirmed, satisfaction creeping into his voice. "Level 5 threat scenario. I had it queued up for tomorrow's advanced class, but since we're here—" He keyed his communicator. "All cadets, be advised. Scenario upgrade, survival protocol in effect. Non-lethal countermeasures engaged." The cadets froze. Even through the reinforced observation glass, I could see their panic. Krexith hunters were nightmare fuel for half the species in the galaxy. 3-meter-tall apex predators from a death world that made most military proving grounds look like resort planets. They had 4 legs built for explosive speed, razor-lined mandibles, and a hunting intelligence that bordered on sapient. Even in simulation form, with the violence dampened and the holographic teeth programmed not to cause real damage, they were terrifying. The simulation Krexith threw back its head and screamed. The sound bypassed logic and went straight to the prey animal part of the brain that every evolved species carries. 3 cadets bolted immediately, scrambling for the exit doors that had locked automatically. The Yeltran fired wildly, hitting nothing. The Corthian at least tried to coordinate, bellowing orders that nobody followed. And Emma Reeves stayed absolutely still. "Interesting," I murmured. "What's interesting is how fast she's about to fail," Vrel said. "Watch. The Krexith hunting pattern starts with isolation. It'll pick off stragglers first. She's small, alone, and—" The holographic predator moved. Stars above, it was fast. It covered 15 meters in a heartbeat, bearing down on the Yeltran who'd been shooting blindly. The cadet screamed, threw away their weapon, and curled into a defensive ball as the Krexith simulation loomed over them. Training protocols kicked in. The Krexith's teeth passed through the Yeltran without real contact, but sensors in the cadet's suit registered the simulated kill. Red lights flashed. The Yeltran was out of the exercise, automatically teleported to the safe zone. 1 down, 14 remaining. The Krexith turned, assessing. Its simulated nostrils flared, processing data streams that mimicked scent tracking. It swiveled its massive head left, then right. Then it looked directly at Emma Reeves. "There it is," Vrel said with grim satisfaction. "Smallest target, isolated, classic prey selection. But something was wrong." I leaned closer to the observation glass, studying the human cadet's posture. She wasn't panicking. Her breathing had slowed, steadied, and her eyes, those strange forward-facing human eyes, were locked on the Krexith, with an intensity that seemed at odds with her earlier fumbling performance. The creature charged. Emma moved, not away, toward. She launched herself from behind the barrier, rolling across the arena floor as plasma-scored concrete scraped her uniform. The Krexith's claws, deadly even in holographic form, slammed into the space she'd occupied a fraction of a second earlier. She came up running, not in a straight line but in a weaving pattern that seemed random until I realized what she was doing. "She's reading its turn radius," I said, more to myself than to Vrel. "She's delaying the inevitable," he countered. The Krexith spun, impossibly fast, and lunged. Again. Emma dropped flat, and I heard the impact of holographic mass passing overhead through the arena speakers. She rolled left, then right, staying inside the creature's striking range but somehow always just beyond its reach. "What is she doing?" Vrel demanded. "She has no weapon. She can't hurt it. All she's accomplishing is—" Emma grabbed something from her belt. Not a weapon. A standard-issue nutrient pack, the kind every cadet carried for long exercises. She tore it open with her teeth and flung the contents directly into the Krexith's sensory array. The simulation stuttered, its tracking algorithms momentarily confused by the unexpected input. It wasn't real damage, couldn't be, but the program was sophisticated enough to react to environmental changes. The creature shook its head, buying Emma maybe 2 seconds. She used them to sprint toward the Corthian cadet who'd been trying to organize a defense. "Cover!" she shouted, her voice hoarse but clear. "Pattern 7! The Corthian blinked all 6 eyes in confusion. Pattern 7 was an advanced defensive maneuver, not scheduled for teaching until third-year courses. How did a Category 4 human even know about Emma? Didn't wait for acknowledgement. She grabbed a fallen plasma rifle, checked its charge with practiced efficiency, and fired 3 rapid shots. Not at the Krexith, which had recovered and was bearing down on them, but at the arena's support columns. The plasma scorched the structural points, triggering the facility's automatic safety responses. Foam suppressant exploded from hidden nozzles, creating a thick cloud that blocked line of sight and confused sensors. "She's turning the arena's safety systems into tactical cover," I breathed. Vrel said nothing. His mandibles had stopped clicking. Through the suppressant foam, shapes moved. The Krexith, hunting by simulated scent and motion tracking. The cadets, some of them finally starting to coordinate under the Corthians, shouted orders, and Emma, small and supposedly weak, directing traffic like she'd done this 1,000 times before. "Left flank," she barked. 2 and 3. "Establish crossfire. Someone get the Yelvian out of that corner before—" The Krexith burst through the foam directly in front of her. No time to dodge, no space to run. The creature's mandibles opened wide, sensors registering a direct hit. Emma shoved her arm into its mouth. The arena went silent except for the hum of holographic processors working overtime. The Krexith simulation bit down, sensors reading the impact, preparing to register another kill. Except Emma's other hand, the one not currently between holographic teeth, held something. A small cylinder that I recognized as a standard emergency flare. Military grade. The kind designed to burn at 3,000 degrees and cut through ship hulls in rescue situations. She'd wedged it against the Krexith's upper palate and triggered it. The simulation didn't know what to do. Krexith hunters were programmed with dozens of response patterns for weapons fire, coordinated attacks, and environmental hazards. But nobody had ever programmed a response for a human cadet, shoving a thermal flare into the creature's throat from the inside. Sparks erupted. The holographic projection flickered, stuttered, and collapsed. The Krexith dissolved into pixels and error messages. Silence filled the arena. Emma Reeves stood in the middle of the combat floor, covered in suppressant foam, her uniform torn, her arm showing angry red sensor marks where the simulation had registered damage. She was breathing hard, swaying slightly on her feet. Then she looked up at the observation deck, directly at us, and smiled. "Simulation complete," the arena's automated voice announced. "Cadet Reeves, survival time 12 minutes 47 seconds. Primary threat neutralized through non-standard methodology. Current evaluation, pending review. Vrel's mandibles hung open. I'd never seen a Corthian look genuinely shocked before. That's impossible, he said. The simulation Crexith has a 92% kill rate against trained soldiers. She's a first-year cadet. She's human. She won, I finished. She won, Commander. The other cadets were emerging from their hiding spots, staring at Emma with expressions ranging from disbelief to something that might have been awe. The Corthian, who'd started coordinating the defense, lumbered over and offered one massive hand in what humans called a handshake. Emma took it without hesitation, though the size difference was almost comical. You cheated, Vrel said finally, finding his voice. There are protocols, approved tactics. She used equipment in unintended ways. She manipulated the safety systems. She survived, I interrupted, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice, against a threat that was 3 evaluation levels above her current training, using nothing but standard issue equipment and whatever parts of her environment she could weaponize. I turned to face the commander directly. Tell me, Vrel, isn't that exactly what we're supposed to be training them to do? He didn't answer. Couldn't, probably, because deep down he knew I was right. But that wasn't what disturbed me. What disturbed me was the look I'd seen on Emma's face in that split second before she'd attacked. Not fear, not panic, not even determination. Rage. Cold, calculated, absolutely terrifying rage. Later, after the cadets had been dismissed and the medical techs had cleared Emma of any serious injuries despite the sensor damage readings, I found myself reviewing the arena footage. Again and again. Vrel had filed a formal complaint, naturally. Violation of training protocols, dangerous precedent, unsuitable behavior for a Category 4 species, the usual administrative nonsense that would go nowhere because, technically, Emma hadn't broken any actual rules. She'd just bent them into shapes nobody had thought possible, but I kept watching that moment, the instant when the Crexith had charged and Emma had stopped running, the shift in her posture, her breathing, her entire demeanor. My people, the Velaskin, are empaths. Not strongly, not like the telepathic races, but enough to pick up on emotional resonance. Enough to sense when something is very, very wrong with what we're seeing. And in that moment, watching a supposed prey species face down a holographic apex predator, I'd felt something that made my blood run cold. Recognition. Not the recognition of seeing something familiar, the recognition of meeting something that had been waiting for exactly this moment. Something that had been pretending to be weak, to be slow, to be helpless. Something that hunted. I closed the review files and sat back in my chair, staring at the darkened screens. Tomorrow would bring the inevitable inquiry. Vrel would push for Emma's dismissal. Other instructors would weigh in. The Academy Board would debate the meaning of protocol versus results. But that wasn't what worried me. What worried me was the quiet conversation I'd overheard in the medical bay between Emma and a younger cadet who'd asked, voice shaking, how she'd stayed so calm. Emma had smiled, that same small smile from the arena. Because predators hunt us on Earth, she'd said simply. Bears, wolves, big cats. We're Category 4 here, sure. But back home, she'd paused, checking her bandaged arm. Back home, we're the species that hunted everything else to the top of the food chain. Not because we were stronger, not because we were faster, but because when something tries to eat us. She'd looked up then, directly at the young cadet. We take it personally. The younger recruit had laughed nervously, clearly thinking it was a joke. I hadn't laughed. Because I'd read the restricted files on humanity's homeworld, the casualty reports from Earth's predators, the statistics on survival rates, on human prey responses, on what evolutionary biologists called their species' persistence hunting strategy. Category 4 didn't mean humans were harmless. It meant they were fragile enough that they'd evolved a dozen different ways to kill things that were stronger than them. And now one of them was in my training program, showing that particular skill set to every cadet in the academy. I pulled up Emma Reeves's admission file one more time, reading through her background. Grew up in the Rocky Mountain region. Mandatory survival training. Standard for human children in wilderness zones. Competitive martial arts. 3 brothers, all enlisted in Earth's planetary defense forces. Psychological evaluation. Stable, focused, quote, demonstrates exceptional problem-solving under pressure. Exceptional problem-solving. That was one way to describe shoving a thermal flare down a simulated predator's throat. My communicator chirped. Message from Vrel. Emergency instructor meeting 0600 tomorrow. Topic: the human problem. I sighed, clicked off the screen, and headed for my quarters. Tomorrow would be interesting, probably exhausting, definitely complicated, but as I walked through the empty corridors of the academy, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed today. We'd called the human cadet weak. We'd been wrong. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, I suspected we were all about to learn exactly how wrong we'd been. The emergency meeting started exactly as I expected, which meant it started badly. Commander Vrel had assembled every senior instructor in Conference Room 7, a space designed for 20 people that currently held 43 increasingly agitated faculty members. The air circulation system struggled to keep up with the mixed atmospheric requirements, leaving the room smelling like a chemical laboratory, having an argument with a swamp. Unacceptable. Instructor Harvek was saying, his Zentari, vocal sacs inflating with each syllable. Complete disregard for established combat doctrine. If we allow this, what message does it send? That winning matters? I offered from my position near the back. 17 heads, various numbers of eyes, and at least 3 sensory appendages I couldn't properly classify turned to stare at me. Winning through approved methods matters, Vrel corrected, his voice carrying that edge of patience stretched thin. Military discipline requires order, structure, predictability. This human displayed none of those qualities. She displayed creativity, countered Instructor Morlax, a grizzled Thulian veteran missing 2 of her forearms from actual combat. Something half our graduates lack entirely. When was the last time any of you saw a first-year cadet defeat a level 5 simulation? She exploited system vulnerabilities, Harvek insisted. She used available resources, Morlax shot back. In real combat, do you think the enemy cares about approved tactics? Do Krexith hunters check the manual before trying to eat you? The argument spiraled from there, following predictable patterns. The traditional instructors wanted Emma expelled, or at minimum severely disciplined. The younger faculty saw potential, something fresh in an institution that had been teaching the same methods for 6 generations. And I sat there, listening, remembering that look on Emma's face. Rage turned to calculation. Calculation turned to action. Action that looked disturbingly like hunting. Enough, Vrel said finally, his command voice cutting through the chaos. This isn't a debate, it's a notification. I've already submitted formal documentation to the Academy Board recommending Cadet Reeves' immediate removal from the combat training program. She's a Category 4. The regulations are clear. The regulations say Category 4 species are unsuited for frontline assault positions, I said, standing up properly this time. They say nothing about special operations, tactical planning, or unconventional warfare, all of which I'd argue Emma demonstrated perfect aptitude for yesterday. Vrel's mandibles clicked irritably. You're splitting hairs. I'm reading the actual rulebook instead of assuming I know what it says. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees, metaphorically anyway, though given the number of cold-blooded species present, maybe literally 2. Inspector Thane, Vrel said, using my formal title like a weapon. You've been with this academy for 12 cycles. You've evaluated thousands of cadets. Are you seriously suggesting that one acceptable performance erases the fundamental biological limitations of an entire species? I considered the question carefully, considered Emma's file, her background, her completely unremarkable entrance exam scores, considered that moment when she'd stopped being prey and become something else entirely. No, I said finally. I'm suggesting we don't actually know what humans' fundamental limitations are, because I checked the classification records. The original Category 4 assessment for humanity was conducted entirely through physical testing and medical examination. Nobody ever put them in combat scenarios. Nobody tested them against actual predators. We measured their bone density and muscle mass and declared them weak, without ever asking what they'd evolved to do with those supposedly inferior bodies. Silence fell. The kind of silence that feels heavy, pregnant with implications nobody wants to examine too closely. Morlax broke it with a rasping laugh. He's right. Stars help us. He's right. We classified them like we were buying pack animals. checked their teeth, measured their height, sent them off to logistics. They break easily, Harvek protested weakly. So do grenades, Morlax countered. Doesn't mean they're not effective. Vrel looked like he wanted to argue further, but his communicator chimed. He checked it, and something in his expression shifted, hardened. This discussion is premature anyway, he said, voice carefully neutral. The Academy Board has accelerated their review. They want a live demonstration. My stomach dropped. What kind of demonstration? Full combat evaluation, tomorrow. Cadet Reeves versus a complete tactical scenario, observed by the board and senior military officials from 3 sector commands. He looked directly at me. They want to see if yesterday was skill or luck, and they want to see it without simulation safety protocols. The room erupted again. Shouts of protest, concerns about liability, questions about which scenario they'd selected. I barely heard it, because this wasn't about Emma anymore. This was politics. The kind of politics that happened when someone challenged assumptions that held up entire power structures. If Emma succeeded again, it meant potentially reassessing every Category 4 species in the military, reopening classifications, shifting personnel allocations, threatening careers built on the comfortable certainty that certain species belonged in certain roles. If she failed, especially if she failed catastrophically, it would reinforce the status quo, and Vrel, I realized, needed her to fail. I left the meeting early, ignoring the continued arguments. I had 12 hours before the evaluation, and I needed to warn Emma what she was walking into, except she already knew. I found her in Training Bay 4, running combat drills at double the recommended intensity for a first-year cadet. Her movements were sharp, economical, each strike and block executed with focus that bordered on meditation. Sweat soaked her uniform. Her hands showed friction burns from the practice weapons. She'd been at this for hours. "Cadet Reeves," I said, announcing my presence before I got close enough to startle her. Surprising a human mid-training seemed like a poor survival choice. She completed her drill sequence before, turning to face me. "Inspector Thane, come to tell me I'm in trouble? Come to tell you it's worse than trouble. The board wants a demonstration tomorrow, full combat scenario, real consequences." Emma reached for her water container, drank deeply, then wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "Let me guess. They're going to throw something horrible at me and hope I die screaming?" The casual way she said it made my blood cold. "They want to see if yesterday was luck." It wasn't. I know. That got her attention. She studied me properly, those predator-forward eyes assessing. "You know?" I gestured to the observation seats. She followed, both of us settling into chairs designed for species with different skeletal structures and ending up equally uncomfortable. "I reviewed your file," I said. "All of it, including the parts you didn't write." Emma's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. "Closed off. Your psychological evaluation mentioned something interesting," I continued. "A note from the examiner about your answer to a standard question. They asked what you'd do if you encountered a hostile alien predator. Your answer was flagged as concerning. I said I'd kill it. You said you'd study it first, learn its weaknesses, then kill it." I paused. The examiner noted that you answered instantly. No hesitation, like you'd thought about it before. Emma was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but steady. "My youngest brother almost died when a mountain lion got into our settlement. He was 8. I was 12. I tracked that cat for 3 days through snow and forest. I learned how it moved, where it hunted, what it feared. Did you kill it? Didn't have to. Led it straight into a ranger patrol using scent markers and noise discipline." She looked at me directly. "Predators are predictable if you understand what drives them. Hunger, territory, fear. Everything hunts the same way, even the things that hunt us. And the Krexith simulation followed the same patterns every predator follows. Rush the weak target, separate the herd, strike fast, strike hard. I just gave it targets that hurt to strike." I believed her, which was almost more disturbing than if she'd gotten lucky. "Tomorrow's scenario won't be a simulation," I said carefully. "They're bringing in something real, probably drugged or restrained enough not to cause permanent damage, but real. If you freeze, if you fail, I won't." The certainty in her voice was absolute, not arrogance, just fact, stated plainly. Emma, I said, using her first name without thinking. They want you to fail. This isn't about your performance. This is about proving that humans don't belong in combat roles. If you succeed, you threaten the entire classification system. She smiled then, not the cold smile from yesterday, something warmer, almost sad. Inspector, my entire species threatened the classification system the day we figured out how to throw rocks hard enough to kill things bigger than us. We've been upsetting natural order for 200,000 years. What's one more day? I wanted to argue, wanted to explain the politics, the implications, the very real danger that she'd be making herself a target for people who preferred their universe orderly and predictable. But looking at her, at the burns on her hands and the determination in her eyes, I realized something important. She already knew, and she didn't care. Because that's what Category 4 meant when applied to humans. Not weak, not fragile, just willing to break themselves into pieces if it meant breaking the thing trying to eat them. Get some rest, I said finally. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. Tomorrow's going to be educational, Emma corrected. For everyone. I left her there still drilling, still preparing, still hunting. The demonstration arena was 3 times larger than the training facility, with observation platforms for over 500 spectators. Every seat was filled, Academy board members in their ceremonial robes, military officials with enough rank insignia to blind someone, faculty members looking nervous, and students, hundreds of students, all craning to see what would happen. Emma stood in the center of the arena floor, looking impossibly small. They'd given her standard combat gear, a basic plasma rifle, and a combat knife. Nothing unusual, nothing that would tip the scales. The arena walls were solid composite, rated to contain actual military-grade threats. No safety foam dispensers, no emergency protocols. Just raw space and whatever they brought in to test her. Attention, boomed the announcement system. Live combat evaluation, Category 4, Species Stress Test. Cadet Emma Reeves versus Designated Threat Assessment. Termination conditions, cadet incapacitation, cadet verbal surrender, or threat neutralization. A door opened on the far side of the arena, the kind of door you use when you need to keep something very dangerous contained. What emerged made the crowd gasp. Not a Krexith, something worse. A Vex Predator from the Outer Rim territories. 2 meters of heavily armored insectoid nightmare with 8 limbs designed for grappling and mandibles that could shear through composite plating. They weren't native to any civilized world, and they were smart, cunning in ways that made them terrifying opponents. But more importantly, they were rare, expensive, the kind of creature you only brought in if you wanted to make absolutely certain of the outcome. Vrel was standing in the front observation box, watching with an expression I couldn't read. The Vex Predator oriented on Emma immediately. Its sensory clusters vibrated, processing threat assessment. It saw a small, soft target, easy prey. It charged. Emma ran, not toward it. Not away. Perpendicular, forcing the Vex to adjust its trajectory mid-sprint. The creature's 8 legs scrambled, for purchase, built for straight-line speed but less agile in turns. She'd learned its movement pattern in 3 seconds. The Vex adjusted, coming at her from a different angle. Emma dropped flat, sliding beneath its striking limbs, firing her plasma rifle upward as she passed underneath. The shots were precise, targeted at the joints where armor plates met softer connecting tissue. The Vex shrieked, more rage than pain. Its armor had held, but Emma was already moving, rolling to her feet, creating distance. She's just delaying, someone muttered from the observation platform. They were wrong. She wasn't delaying. She was mapping. Every charge taught her something new about the creature's capabilities, its turn radius, its acceleration patterns, how it tracked prey, whether by sight or pheromones or thermal signature. Information gathered in seconds that would take most species hours of study. The Vex was getting frustrated, which made it sloppy. It lunged with 3 limbs simultaneously, sacrificing balance for reach. Emma used the plasma rifle like a club, slamming it against the outstretched limb and simultaneously firing. The impact plus the energy discharge finally cracked the armor. The Vex pulled back, reassessing. That's when Emma dropped the rifle entirely. The crowd murmured in confusion. She was disarming herself against something that could tear her apart. But I saw what she was doing. Saw her pull something small from her belt, Another emergency flare, like yesterday. Except this time she didn't ignite it. She threw it. Not at the Vex. Past it. At the far wall of the arena, the flare bounced, skittered, rolled to a stop 20 meters away. The Vex's sensory clusters swiveled, tracking the movement. New target. Potential threat. The creature's predator instincts warred with its tactical assessment. This small prey had hurt it. But there was new movement, new stimulus. Emma threw a second flare, then a third, each one in a different direction, creating multiple points of motion and heat signature. The Vex's attention fragmented, tracking everything simultaneously. Predators don't like uncertainty. They like clear targets, simple choices. Emma gave it chaos instead. Then she moved. Not running, stalking. Low and quiet, circling behind the confused creature while it tried to prioritize threats. She retrieved her plasma rifle without making a sound. The Vex finally decided, charging toward the cluster of flares as if they represented a group of prey trying to hide. Emma shot it in the back, not the armored plates. The exposed neural cluster at the base of its main body segment, the one weak point every insectoid predator shared. The Vex went down hard, legs spasming, shrieking in rage and pain. Not dead. Emma's aim had been too controlled for that, but paralyzed, helpless. She walked up to it slowly, rifle trained on its sensory clusters. "Threat neutralized," she said calmly into the arena microphones. The silence that followed was absolute. Then one cadet started clapping, then another. Then half the student section erupted in applause that echoed off the composite walls like thunder. The military officials looked stunned. The board members were frantically consulting with each other. And Vrel stood frozen, watching his carefully constructed demonstration fall apart. Emma looked up at the observation boxes, found me in the crowd, and smiled. Not triumph, not vindication, just simple acknowledgement. This is what I am. This is what my species does. The medical team retrieved the paralyzed Vex while combat specialists secured the arena. Emma submitted to a medical scan that confirmed minor abrasions but no serious injuries. The board members filed out, already arguing about implications and protocols and what this meant for classification standards. I made my way down to the arena floor, where Emma was giving her formal report to a recording officer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Inspector Thane," she said when she saw me approach. "Permission to speak freely?" "Granted." "Did I just start a political nightmare?" "Yes." "Good." I couldn't help it. I laughed. Actual, genuine laughter that made several nearby officials stare. "You realize what's coming," I said. "Reviews, committees. Every Category 4 species in the military is going to demand reassessment. This is going to reshape policy for decades." "I know," Emma said. "But maybe it should. Maybe we've been letting old classifications determine our future for too long. Maybe it's time people stopped assuming they know what weak means." She had a point. A terrifying, inconvenient, completely correct point. "What happens now?" she asked. Now you finish your training. If they let you, which they probably will because expelling you after that performance would raise questions they don't want to answer. You graduate. You serve. And someday, when historians talk about the moment everything changed, your name is going to be first on the list." Emma shook her head. "I'm not trying to change everything. I just want to do my job. Your job, apparently, is making apex predators reconsider their life choices." That earned me a genuine laugh. The sound of it, bright and human, and completely at odds with what I'd just witnessed, reminded me why this mattered. Because strength wasn't about size or armor or natural weapons. It was about the ability to face something terrifying and find a way through, to turn fear into focus, to hunt the things that hunted you. Humans had been doing it since they first picked up sticks and stones on some distant savanna. They'd just been waiting for the rest of us to notice. Later that evening, after the chaos had died down and the academy slowly returned to normal operations, I found a message waiting in my personal files. From Commander Vrel, a simple note, no recorded voice, just text. "You were right, I was wrong. Request. Transfer to administrative duties. I don't understand these new cadets anymore. Maybe I never did." I stared at it for a long time before filing it away. Change was coming. Uncomfortable, necessary, unstoppable change. And it had arrived wearing a torn uniform and a smile that had once seemed weak, until you realized it was the smile of something that had stopped running and started hunting. They'd called the human cadet weak. They'd never make that mistake again.